So I think the DWeb for Creators course especially was super helpful. And when we did the cloud busting course and they taught us the server, I wasn't really expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but like when they showed us how to build it, how easy it was to do, I was like, this is like really, really fucking cool. Excuse my French. When the instructor showed us like all the different applications and like stuff you could do with it, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of potential here to do stuff with the archive. And I think that the reason I applied to the Cultural Memory Lab was, of course, largely because of the archive, but I also have this, of course, personal connection to wanting to de-Google, decentralize my life, and think more about my digital privacy and security. So, yeah. So the server is literally just hooked up like over there next to my Wi-Fi router, like in a case, like a Raspberry Pi, real
Oh, so it's
simple.
just like a little thing that you could just buy, but it's just a teeny little, like, cheap piece of hardware. You didn't have to get like a big computer or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. And the good thing about this too, because it's basically hosted through this program called YunoHost. YunoHost has these really comprehensive docs to where if you didn't know anything about self-hosting, it even teaches you like what is self-hosting, why is it important. It tells you like why you should host yourself. It even tells you like why you should not self-host. If this doesn't fit, it tells you like it comes with great responsibility.
Exactly. The Spider-Man rule, we call it.
Yeah, yeah. And then it tells you all the different things you can install it on. So you could use a big computer if you wanted, or you could be like me and just use a Raspberry Pi, which is what I'm using. And just bought, you can buy these starter kits where it comes with the Raspberry Pi and like a case for it and an SD card, basically everything you need to get it started. I do think that, of course, like buying it, like the starter kit might be high for some communities. I think it was like 100 and something dollars. But theoretically, on the Pi, you could have a bunch of people like on the Raspberry Pi on top of everything else that I'm already doing with it. So if you were in a community of 10 people and you all pitched in $10, that makes it a lot more accessible than say trying to do it yourself.
So
So I
once
think
you
it's
have that, how did you get the UnoHost software on? What was the process you followed? Was it to put some command lines down? How did you make this happen?
Yeah, literally just following the docs. It's very comprehensive, so it tells you everything you need. Really, all you had to do was download the UnoHost image software onto an SD card, and then you basically plug it in to Raspberry Pi. You have to do a couple things like with setting up the Wi-Fi router and stuff to get it all set up. But it was really simple. I want to say it literally only took 30 minutes, if that. But once you set it all up, this is the screen like you're presented with. And this is really cool. And what makes self-hosting more accessible because it gives you like a graphical interface to interact with everything rather than doing everything through command line. So this is why I also thought it was really cool because for someone like me who's just like jumping into this world really and doesn't really have a large coding experience, I can look at this and super easily understand everything. I can see like all the domains that are on my server. I can go here and easily install applications like an app store. And it's like in all these different categories. And it's like easy for me to look at, click into something, and then read about it. So it tells me what this is, what the features are, and gives me a really easy interface just to be able to install applications on the server. So because of this is why I felt like it was easy for me to use this for the archive and like connect like these different layers. What would be good to talk about next? So I think like how this began to start was, of course, I was doing everything in Google. And so I think we talked a lot about this while I was going through the lab. Like I have this sheet or these sheets that like organize like the entire archive's metadata. And the biggest thing I wanted to do with this is like move this sheet like off of Google into the server. So that way I'm using like open source software and I feel like I'm more of the owner of the material. So I was able to download like my own sort of version of cloud, which is like Nextcloud, and also install like my own office on it. And because of that, I'm already like taking steps, of course, to deGoogle, put the stuff on my server. So the course taught me how to do the server, which was really cool. And then at the same time, y'all were teaching me IPFS. It's all these kind of things are happening at once. That's why I'm like, how do I? But yeah, so y'all were able to teach me IPFS. But at the same time, I'm learning the server and I have this sheet where I have all of my archival material. The important part about this register too is that within the register, I have links. I had already links prior to the Collection Memory Lab of where the archival material was being stored. So it's being stored on Google Drive. We were already using the 321 method. So it was being stored on Google Drive. It was also stored on my local machine. And then I have some offsite storage drive for the material. But then y'all taught me IPFS, this cool software where I can store the material and it'll be like immutable, and each file will get like its own like CID. The cool thing about this is that, yeah, as you saw there, like how I just did that, like each file like gets its own link. So going back. So now that there's like this other location, like for the files, I'm like, okay, I can put that in my digital asset register. So I put all the files with their own unique ID and where the storage location is. But the biggest thing is like, how do I make all of this like publicly accessible? Like, I want to make a website at the end of this. How am I going to do all this? And I know I didn't want to use Google Drive. I'm like, and I didn't want to use Squarespace or WordPress and I could use like open source WordPress, but I think it would be like pretty difficult to try and do that like with an archive. And so I was just like, what do I do? Based on like other labs I've been in prior to the cultural memory lab, they talk a lot about this tool called CollectionBuilder, like these different like archival groups. And CollectionBuilder is basically like this open source framework where you can create like a collection or exhibit website like for your archive of what or whatever you're trying to exhibit just through your archive's metadata. And you do this by either plugging in like a CSV file using Google Sheets or using GitHub. And so I was like, okay, I have already this like sheet that has all of my archival material. So I'm like, is there any way like I can bridge all of these like together like through CollectionBuilder? So CollectionBuilder basically gives you a walkthrough and tells you like with demo materials how you can set up your own CollectionBuilder project. So they basically tell you to install all these pieces of software, go through like making a repository in GitHub so you can have everything like saved to the cloud. And then it tells you how to set up your CSV file so that you can make your own website. And then at the end of it, I wonder if I can show like a demo. So this is after you put in the metadata, this is what it looks like bare bones. And yeah, there are several other projects who have used CollectionBuilder, like you were saying. Yeah, it's the example collections. And people have used it for a ton of different things. What would be a good one to click? Beowulf? Yeah, so there's like this project on Beowulf. And this is literally all loaded from a CSV file pretty much. But basically the framework is they've created like all these different layouts using primarily HTML and Markdown that like connects to the CSV file to develop so that all these pages like are automatically populated with all the stuff. So basically my quandary was, can I use CollectionBuilder? Because pretty much how they ask you to load the images is either like through committing the objects directly into your project, but that would mean you're committing them directly into GitHub, which is not ideal because they have like storage limits and stuff like that, or through using your own server. But this is primarily for like universities who have like robust like data centers and stuff. And so I was like, okay, what if I just use the IPFS links within my CSV file instead of committing them to that or trying to use links for my own server? So this is like all the metadata, how I had to set it up for CollectionBuilder.
Right. So
And
they
then,
just gave you like a template spreadsheet to say these are like the headers we're gonna need.
yeah, pretty much. And I basically just took that from my metadata I already had and put it in the way they needed to. So it was fairly simple. It was just like using Excel code. And then you'll see that all the location links are from the interplanetary file system. I won't go super in detail into what all this is, but basically I just had to make like different sizes, like for the images, and do like different uploads into IPFS so that way the way it loads on the website just looks nice.
So you're bringing, so you did some like resizing that used a batch resizing tool.
Yeah, and all of that you CollectionBuilder tells you how to do it as well, and it was like super easy. Yeah, so I just batch resize all the images I had in my archive, re-uploaded them into IPFS so that I have these 3 different set of links. So there's like the full size, the small size, and a thumbnail. And then you take this, you export the sheet, drop it into your project. And this is my project here in Visual Studio Code. And this is that sheet I'm showing you on Google, just all like in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see this is like the framework that they have. It has a whole bunch of includes, layouts, plugins are already good for you to go because you're just taking pretty much their repository. And then I did my own, of course, pizzazz on it and how I wanted it to be. And that is what has led us to this site. So I just did like a whole bunch of custom CSS through like Googling a bunch of stuff. And yeah, what's cool about this is that it's pretty fast, and I like beta tested it with 20 people. I just put out an open call on my social media of
They're
people
like, everyone hammer out the page right now. Let's see what happens.
yeah, and they said it all loaded pretty fast. So I'm like, okay, cool. Of course, it's like there are gonna be like issues sometimes, like loading it from IPFS. It's not like super perfect, but it's okay. It'll eventually load, and that's fine. But you can click in and you'll see like the images here loads with like your citation and rights. Like that's all like from the
Mm-hmm.
CollectionBuilder framework. And when you click to view it full screen, this might take a second, of course, again, because it's loading from IPFS. And you click download, it'll take you to the IPFS link.
Right.
So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, all these images are being loaded from IPFS. And then I've just broken down like everything, of course, like on this our data page. I'm trying to think if I've missed anything. Yeah, so CollectionBuilder, interplanetary file system. And then yeah, so after I developed the website all through here and exported it, when you run like the final like deployment, basically it creates this file thing called underscore site, how you taught us pretty much like at the end. And so you can basically use this how it like suits your project needs. And so since I already had the server, I already developed I have my own website on my server already. I don't know if I can show this. Yeah, so I already have like my own personal website that I use from open WordPress. So I was like, okay, I can make like maybe a subdomain
Mm-hmm.
and have the project on here. Pretty much all I had to do was like install this app called My Web App. And they taught us this in DWeb for Creators course too. But My Web App, it just allows you to use an empty web application to put your static site. So I ran that final deployment, generated the site file, and this web app like tells you how to do it even if you didn't know how to do any of this. And you use SFTP to like put the site into my web app, like through the domain. So that's what makes it like publicly accessible to everyone. So the entire site is like on the server. But it's
Right.
also
So you went from basically taking this thing in Visual Studio, which it sounds like that template was just one of the ones that you can just get directly from the collection builder, drop that to project, and then you're just modifying the sort of the template in place there, the code editor.
yeah. And you can see, let's see. So like for the our data page, for example, can you see Visual Studio Code?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So for like the our data page, for example, there's like this is all from CollectionBuilder. So this is basically how the CollectionBuilder docs tells you is to download their repository from GitHub, and you're basically like replacing everything in their repository with your materials. So like in the data, for example, they have a demo repository. You just replace that with your repository. And they have pretty much the fundamental way is how this works is they have these HTML layouts and you like tweak the layouts to how you want to use it.
Right. So
So
you need to have some experience doing some kind of HTML and CSS work to tweak it if you want to play with beyond the default templates.
yeah, pretty how I have it now is of course like a lot nicer than like how they had it. But if you just wanted like the default template, which is like this, that could like totally like work for people's projects as well.
Right, right.
Yeah, this is how it looked at the beginning, and this is how the about page would look, and this is how like the browse page looks. You can see like the similarities. I have it
Hmm.
the same layouts. I just did a lot of CSS on my end to make it look fun and nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The browse page, of course, is pretty much the same sort of deal. I just like added animations and stuff like that. And then the about page, same thing. I added some CSS so that there was like a nice table of contents on the side and stuff. But when I first did the site, it looked like exactly like this.
Right.
Mwah.
But it sounds like basically if you've got if you're technically curious and willing to slowly work your way through the tutorials, they should like have you end up in the right place. So you went and you installed the pieces of the files they needed, sorry, the apps they needed, like the things for resizing images, the app for layout, like Jekyll. Sounds like you went through and installed all those successfully on your local computer.
I don't want to say it's easy, I guess, but if people
Ah,
are willing to like just read like tutorials and stuff, I think it's like really cool. Like, I think a big part of being like open source is okay, in order to make things open source, like people have to understand like what you're trying to do, like with your software. And of course, like the ways people want to use open source software, people are going to want to stretch it in the different ways, like for their needs. And so, like with the UnoHost docs I was showing earlier, and then with these like collection builder docs, they're like really robust because I think like they know that, right? And
yeah.
so a lot of the stuff like I was able to do was because like I read the docs like and like they were like pretty good. And then anything extra I wanted to do, like I could like VR off on my way once I had whatever. But for the batch images, for example, they have a doc on that. Yeah, it's this object. It's like interested in learning how to add object files directly to the repository because this is like from they already give you like a demo collection to use.
Hmm.
So they're like, okay, if you just want to skip all the demo and get right to it, this is how you need to do it. But they're basically like, you can go ahead and put your stuff in, but you need to have small images and thumbnail images so it looks nice on the site. So it's like interested in learning how to do that. You want to check out this walkthrough first. So I just read the walkthrough and it tells me that I can download this. I think you do it at the beginning, like when you're setting up the CSV walkthrough,
Hmm.
because like you of course have to like your gem file has all the bundle stuff. So rake derivatives is one of them that comes like bundled. So you basically put your archive in Visual Studio Code as if you're going to commit them directly to your project. You run the task and it creates like a bunch of thumbnail and small images for you that are on your machine pretty much. And I just took all that, put it in IPFS, and then took them all out from my project and just took those links, put them in the CSV file, put them in the project.
And then, yeah, so in your case, you uploaded to IPFS and then updated your sheet.
Yeah. And it tells you pretty much that in the walkthrough. I'm just doing things a little bit differently. How I was saying earlier, like with open source software, people are going to want to do it to their project. So this is telling them to commit it directly to their project and just write that in the CSV as if you committed
Mhm.
it to the project. So instead of how they're writing it right here as if it were in their project, I'm putting the IPFS links instead because that's how I want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and then it tells you to go back to the walkthrough. Okay, you are using your own archive. Now you can continue going through our thing to get this all set up.
I think this gives someone a really good sense of, okay, these are the steps I'm going to follow to, if I want to basically go fully open source and really own everything myself. You own the server, you can set up your own version of a Google Sheet or an Excel, so it can be something you host, so you can the CSV file and manage that from something you fully own. And then Collection Builder again is something that you have downloaded on your own computer, like no one owns it except for you. And then you add that into the dummy app and off you went.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I did too is, of course, I'm trying to make sure the principles are like all cool through all of this. So I took the project off of GitHub and did my own self-hosted version of a Git repository called Gitea. So this is also on my server, but I use a little AI, unfortunately. And I have this README that tells you like the entire stack that I use specifically for the project. And it tells you a lot about what's making the project run too. So this might be helpful too for
Yeah, no,
people. I think the overall shebang is where I started was like I was just like a community archivist, like with the way I was storing the images before, like literally just in Google Drive. And through going through the cultural memory lab, they taught me the server and y'all taught me how to use IPFS. And I just had this wanting to make a website, but I don't know like how to officially make a website. Stick true to the DWeb principles, but also like still being a baby coder. Through the lab, after I put everything in IPFS and built the server, I had like options to do more things. And what I chose was CollectionBuilder. So I just from where I started having this Google Sheet, I could take this Google Sheet, update it with the IPFS storage location, actually even get off Google Sheets and have my own office on the
hmm
server. Exported the sheets, followed the walkthrough for Collection Builder, put my sheets in Collection Builder, and then have this basic template for the website. And I just made it super nice with CSS. And yeah, and then I'm also using the server to host the website itself.
I love how you created the documentation page. You actually said, let's make sure that I'm taking the work that I've done and charting a path for the next person to follow. Next person doesn't need to go through several different cohorts and groups. You're like, oh no, I can maybe self-serve my way towards success.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that by nature of the work I do, like, of course, like I'm like talking to a lot of different, like memory workers who are like in the same position I am. I started the archive because it was a need like for my community. Like all this began as like a research project and
Mm.
because like people weren't documenting Black LGBT history, right? And I was just like a journalist and a writer. And so I'm like learning everything like trial by fire and like what I think is best like for like my community, like understanding like what their needs are and doing my best like to fulfill them. And so with that, it's like a very noble thing, but then it's okay. I don't know necessarily. Maybe like some community archivists don't even know like the proper way like to scan images, for example, let alone developing an entire like static website server, what have you. And so I think that's like an important like part of this project too. And a lot of what I was talking about in the lab, I want to create like precedent that like this is possible and show other like community archivists that like we can be true stewards of our data. And yes, a lot of this like technology can get like super like sophisticated and out of our realm or whatever. But I also think that as someone who's 26 and is growing up with the dawn of the internet and stuff, it's up to
Hmm.
our generation to not fall into the ease of use of just like picking up Google and calling it a day. How do we understand technology better and the different tools that we're using and use them to our advantage? And yes, it's going to require a little bit of work, and people don't necessarily have to go the same path that I went on. But I think I just like want to show other community archivists and institutions as well
Hmm.
that this is possible. This is really cool. And we can like not only like truly be the stewards of like our own histories and be in control of our data, we can do it beautifully too and with a purpose.
Amazing. I think that is a lovely way to wrap it up.